She walked into that blind date holding her 5-year-old daughter's hand and a resignation letter she had just thrown at 37 men who told her she was too much to love. She expected him to see the CEO. She expected him to see the divorced woman. She expected him to see the child and quietly start calculating his exit. Instead, he stood up, walked right past her, and knelt down in front of her daughter. "Hi, I was hoping I could meet the most important person in your mom's life first." Amelia Carter had survived a billion-dollar company, a brutal divorce, and a husband who looked her in the eyes and said, "No man wants to raise another man's child." But nothing had prepared her for a man who proved all of that wrong in under 30 seconds. And what he did next changed everything. Drop your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. If it moves, you hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what's coming. The morning it all fell apart began like every other morning in Amelia Carter's life, precisely, efficiently, and alone. Her alarm went off at 5:15. Not because she said it, because her body had long forgotten how to rest. Somewhere between building a billion-dollar company and raising a 5-year-old daughter by herself, sleep had become a luxury she simply stopped expecting. She was already standing at the kitchen counter, dressed in a charcoal blazer and tailored slacks, when Olivia padded down the hallway in her pajamas, the ones with the little yellow stars dragging her stuffed rabbit by one ear, the way she always did when she was still half asleep. "Mommy," Olivia mumbled, voice thick with sleep. "Is today Saturday?" "It's Tuesday, baby." Olivia considered this with the seriousness that only 5-year-olds possess. Then she held up her rabbit. "Mr. Bunny says it should be Saturday." Amelia didn't smile. Not yet. But something shifted slightly behind her eyes, something that might have been warmth if she'd allowed it to fully surface. "Tell Mr. Bunnies that Mommy has a board meeting at 7. He says that's boring." "He's right." She poured Olivia a small cup of orange juice, set out a bowl of cereal, and then turned back to the stack of documents on the counter. Merger projections, quarterly reports, a legal brief from her general counsel flagged urgent in red. The kind of red that meant someone was either suing her company or threatening to. At 34 years old, Amelia Carter was the CEO of Vertex Technologies, a software infrastructure company she had founded in a one-bedroom apartment with $12,000 in student loan money and an idea that everyone around her called reckless. Within 8 years, she had turned that recklessness into a billion-dollar valuation. She had been featured on the cover of Forbes Fast Company and Inc. magazine. She had been invited to speak at Davos. She had testified before the United States Senate on the future of artificial intelligence. She was by every measurable standard a success story, and she was profoundly, quietly, devastatingly lonely. Not the kind of lonely that people talk about at dinner parties. Not the performance of loneliness that attracts sympathy and casseroles. This was the kind of loneliness that lives in the space between who you are in public and who you are at 2 in the morning when your daughter has a nightmare, and you go to her room and hold her until she falls back asleep, and then you stay there sitting on the edge of her bed in the dark, not because she still needs you, but because you need her, because she is the only person in the world in whose presence you never have to pretend. That was Amelia's loneliness, and it had been building for 3 years. The divorce had not been dramatic. That was almost the worst part. Marcus Carter, her ex-husband, a corporate attorney with a Harvard degree and a talent for making every room feel smaller, had not shouted, had not broken things, had not done any of the things that would have made it easier to hate him cleanly. He had simply looked at her one evening across a kitchen, not unlike this one, and said with the calm certainty of a man delivering a verdict, "I didn't sign up for this." This was a lot of things. This was Amelia working 70-hour weeks during Vertex's critical expansion period. This was the miscarriage they had suffered 18 months earlier, which neither of them had processed and neither of them had discussed. This was Amelia's younger sister, Dana, dying unexpectedly from a cardiac event at 27 years old, leaving behind a newborn daughter that no one else in the family could take. This was Amelia deciding without asking Marcus first, because there had been no time to ask Marcus first, that she was going to adopt the baby. "You made a unilateral decision that affects both of our lives," Marcus had said. "You always do." "She's my sister's daughter," Amelia had replied. "She has no one. She has the state. She has the system. She has options that don't include blowing up our marriage. If you're calling our marriage blown up because I chose to raise an orphaned newborn, then maybe it was never what I thought it was." Marcus had been quiet for a long time after that. Then he had said the thing she had never forgiven him for. "Amelia, no man wants to raise another man's child, and no man wants to spend his life competing with a woman's career. You need to figure out which life you actually want, because you can't have all of them." He moved out 3 weeks later. The divorce was finalized 4 months after that, and Amelia was left with a company to run a newborn to raise, and a sentence embedded so deeply into her chest that she sometimes felt it like a physical weight pressing against her sternum when she breathed. No man wants to raise another man's child. She had not told many people the full story. Her executive team knew she was a single mother. Her investors knew she was divorced. A handful of close colleagues knew that Olivia was adopted. But very few people knew why. Very few people knew about Dana, about the hospital room, about Amelia sitting alone with a 3-day-old baby surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the sound of monitors making the most important decision of her life in under 4 minutes. She didn't talk about it because she didn't trust people with it. She had learned through Marcus and through the years that followed that people treated her vulnerabilities like ammunition. That the same qualities that made her formidable in a boardroom, her intensity, her certainty, her refusal to perform weakness, made her difficult in a relationship. Men either wanted to compete with her or be rescued by her. Neither of those things was what she needed. Neither of those things was even close. So she had stopped looking. Or rather, she had decided that looking was a form of hope she could no longer afford. Which was why when her best friend Diane called her on a Thursday afternoon in late October, Amelia answered on the second ring and immediately regretted it. "Before you say no," Diane started. "No. Amelia? Whatever it is, no. I have the Blackwell acquisition to close by Friday. I have Olivia's parent-teacher conference on Thursday, and I have not slept more than 5 consecutive hours since September. I set you up on a blind date." The silence that followed was approximately 3 seconds long and contained multitudes. "Diane. His name is Jordan. He's a friend of Marcus's cousin. No, wait, don't hang up. He doesn't know Marcus. I triple-checked. They've never even met. I'm hanging up. He's a single father." Amelia did not hang up. There was something about those 3 words that she had not expected. Not because they made her more optimistic, they didn't particularly, but because they recalibrated her resistance. A single father was someone who understood, at least in theory, that a child was not a complication to be managed. A single father had presumably sat at the edge of a bed in the dark and felt that particular kind of necessary loneliness. "Tell me about him," she said after a moment. Diane exhaled. "His name is Jordan Mitchell. He's 38. He's an aircraft mechanic, works for a commercial airline, has for about 12 years. He's black. He's kind. He's Amelia. Listen, I've met him twice, and both times he spent most of the conversation asking about other people. He asked about my mother. He remembered that she had hip surgery. He followed up. Do you understand how rare that is? That's a low bar, Diane. In this economy, that bar is 6 feet underground, and he still cleared it." A pause. "He has a 6-year-old daughter, Zoe. His ex-wife left when Zoe was 3. He's been raising her by himself ever since." Amelia was quiet. "He's not looking for someone to impress," Diane continued more gently. "He's not looking for a trophy or a stepping stone or someone to fix. I genuinely think he's just looking for someone real." "Everyone says that." "I know, but not everyone means it." Another silence. Longer this time. "Where?" Amelia asked. "Hartley's, that little Italian place on West Randolph, Saturday at 7. I'd have to bring Olivia. I can't get a sitter on 2 days' notice." Diane hesitated only slightly. "Then bring Olivia." "Most men don't love that." Then he's not the right man. Diane's voice was firm. Amelia, just go. Worst case, you get pasta out of it. Amelia looked at the documents on her counter, at the red-flagged brief, at the merger projections she hadn't finished reviewing. Then she looked at Olivia, who was now holding Mr. Bunny's up to the window, presumably so the stuffed animal could observe the sunrise. Saturday at 7, Amelia said. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm probably going to cancel Friday afternoon. You're not going to cancel. She almost did. Saturday came. The way October. Saturdays in Chicago tend to come gray and cold, with a wind off the lake that cuts through coats and makes even simple errands feel slightly adversarial. Amelia spent the day trying to prepare. She told herself she wasn't nervous. She was thorough. There was a difference. She approached the date the way she approached acquisitions, with research preparation and a clearly defined exit strategy in case the situation deteriorated. She knew almost nothing about Jordan Mitchell beyond what Diane had told her. She resisted the urge to search for him online. Not because she was committed to the surprise of it, but because she knew that if she looked him up and found something she didn't like, or worse, found something she liked too much, she would use it as either a reason to back out or a reason to expect too much. Both of those outcomes were dangerous. At 4 o'clock, she helped Olivia pick out an outfit. Olivia wanted to wear her Halloween costume. She was going through a phase, and Amelia negotiated her down to a dark green dress with white collar that Olivia declared was princess enough. Mommy, Olivia said, watching Amelia apply lipstick in the bathroom mirror. Where are we going? To have dinner with someone. A friend? Amelia considered the question. Someone who might be a friend. What's his name? Amelia paused with the lipstick halfway down. How do you know it's a he? Olivia looked at her with the particular brand of 5-year-old patience usually reserved for explaining things to adults who are being slow. Because you did your hair different. Amelia looked at herself in the mirror. She had done her hair different. His name is Jordan, she said. Olivia nodded seriously. Is he nice? I don't know yet. How will you find out? I'll watch how he acts. That's what I do at school, Olivia said. With new kids, I watch first, then I decide. Amelia looked at her daughter, this small, watchful, impossibly perceptive person, and felt the familiar compound emotion that Olivia reliably produced in her equal parts love and terror, and something that might have been awe. Smart girl, she said. Olivia picked up Mr. Bunny's from the counter. Mr. Bunny's is coming too. Absolutely. He says he wants the pasta. We'll see what we can do. Tama. They arrived at Hartley's at 6:58. The restaurant was warm and small, in the way that good Italian restaurants always are. Amber light, the smell of garlic and wine, wooden chairs that had hosted enough dinners to have earned their own stories. A hostess led them to a table near the back, and Amelia scanned the room with the same peripheral efficiency she used in every unfamiliar environment. She saw him before he saw her. He was already at the table, and he was looking toward the front of the restaurant. Not at his phone, not at the menu, just looking toward the door with the quiet patience of someone who had learned to wait without fidgeting. He was tall, even sitting. Dark complexion, close-cropped hair with a slight fade, wearing a simple navy blazer over a white shirt, clean and thoughtful without being try-hard about it. His hands were on the table in front of him, relaxed, and there was something in his posture that Amelia registered instinctively, the way her body registered information before her mind caught up to analyze it. He looked settled, not comfortable in the smug sense, not relaxed in the careless sense, just settled. Like a man who knew where he was and had decided to be fully present in it. Then he saw her. And then immediately, without hesitation, before his eyes even traveled to Amelia's face, he saw Olivia. And something happened in his expression that Amelia had never seen happen on a first date before. He did not stiffen. He did not rearrange his face into the polite, neutral mask of a man recalculating. He did not do the thing she had seen other men do, that subtle but unmistakable reset, that micro-expression that communicated, oh, and then immediately tried to take it back. Instead, his whole face opened, not performatively, not in the way of someone who knows they're being watched and wants to look good, in the way of someone who looked at a child and genuinely liked what they saw. He stood up. He came around the table. He walked toward them. And this was the thing that would stay with Amelia. The thing she would replay later that night, sitting in the dark of her living room, after Olivia was asleep. He stopped walking when he was still several feet away, and he crouched down. Not all the way to his knee, just low enough to be level with a 5-year-old. He looked at Olivia directly. "Hi there," he said. His voice was low and unhurried, and completely without the forced brightness that adults often use with children, the performative enthusiasm that children always see through and always distrust. He sounded like himself, just a slightly quieter version shaped for smaller ears. "I'm Jordan. I was hoping I could meet the most important person in your mom's life first." Olivia stared at him. She had the evaluative stillness of a child conducting a very serious audit. Jordan waited. He didn't rush her. He didn't fill the silence with more words. He just waited, which was. Amelia would later think exactly the right thing to do. Finally, Olivia held up her stuffed rabbit. "This is Mr. Bunny's," she said. "He's also important." Jordan's face shifted into something that was unmistakably real. Not a polite smile, not a charmed by the adorable child smile, but genuine amusement, the kind that starts in the eyes. "Mr. Bunny's," he repeated with appropriate gravity. "Good to know. Does Mr. Bunny's have any dietary restrictions? Because I heard the pasta here is excellent." Olivia considered. "He's a rabbit, so probably not pasta." "Probably not," Jordan agreed. "But I bet he'd appreciate a good breadbasket." Olivia looked at Mr. Bunny's, then back at Jordan. Then she delivered her verdict with the solemnity of a small judge. "Okay. Just that. Okay. One word." But Amelia had spent 5 years learning to read Olivia's one-word verdicts, and she knew what this one meant. She meant, "You passed." Jordan straightened and finally looked at Amelia. And the moment he did, Amelia found herself doing something she almost never did in professional or social settings. She forgot what she had planned to say. "Amelia," she said, extending her hand. "Jordan." He shook it firm, brief, the handshake of a person who didn't need to perform confidence through a handshake. "Thank you for coming. I know this was a lot to arrange." "It was," she said. Honest. Slightly more direct than she'd intended. He didn't flinch from it. "I appreciate it anyway." They sat down, and Amelia thought, "Okay. One drink. If it's terrible, one drink, and then you have homework to do, and Olivia has an early bedtime." That was the plan. The plan lasted approximately 8 minutes. It ended when Jordan, without preamble, turned to Olivia and said, "So, tell me everything about your drawings. Your mom's friend mentioned you're serious about art." Olivia looked at her mother, then back at Jordan, with the expression of a person who has been unexpectedly offered something they very much wanted, but is slightly suspicious of the offer. "How do you know about my drawings?" she asked. "I did my research," Jordan said simply. "What research?" "I asked questions before I showed up, because meeting someone important deserves preparation." Olivia absorbed this. "Mommy does that, before meetings." "Smart woman." Amelia watched her daughter's face. Olivia reached into the small canvas bag she'd brought and withdrew a folded piece of paper, a drawing she'd made the previous afternoon of what appeared to be a horse wearing a graduation cap. She slid it across the table to Jordan. Jordan looked at it for a long moment. Not the quick glance and compliment that adults usually gave children's artwork. He actually looked at it. "Is this horse graduating?" he asked. "From riding school," Olivia said with great dignity. "Do horses attend their own riding school?" Olivia paused. Considered. "This one does, because she's advanced." "What's her name?" "Professor Gallup." Jordan nodded once. "Professor Gallup, I respect that. Did she graduate with honors?" Olivia pressed her lips together in a way that meant she was trying not to smile and was losing. High honors. Of course. Jordan folded the drawing carefully and slid it back to her. You're going to be famous, you know. I'm serious. Most people draw horses. You draw horses with ambition. And Olivia smiled. Not the careful, evaluative expression she'd worn for the last 10 minutes, but a real smile, the one that showed the gap where she'd lost a tooth in September, the one that Amelia had spent 5 years loving and trying to protect. Amelia felt something shift. It was minor, barely perceptible, but something that had been held very tightly inside her chest, held the way you hold something fragile and irreplaceable, loosened slightly like a single thread in a knot. She picked up her menu. Over appetizers, the conversation moved through territory that Amelia had not expected. Jordan didn't ask about Vertex, didn't ask about her net worth, her investor relationships, her acquisition strategy, or her thoughts on the tech economy. All questions she had been asked on every date she'd been on in the last 3 years, because apparently men who dated CEOs wanted to feel like they were in a business meeting. Jordan asked her how she took her coffee. Black, she said. Strong. Morning or all day? Both. Is that a character flaw? I drink 3 cups before 7 a.m., he said. I'm not in any position to judge. He asked her what she did when she wasn't working. She told him she read mostly history, some biography, occasionally mysteries, when her brain was too tired for nonfiction. He asked her what history. She said she'd just finished a biography of Robert F. Kennedy, and before that had gone through a period of reading about the civil rights movement that had lasted almost 18 months. What started that? He asked. She was quiet for a moment. Olivia started asking questions about the world, about why things were the way they were, and I realized I didn't have good enough answers. She looked at her daughter, who was now drawing on a paper napkin, tongue slightly between her teeth in concentration. I didn't want to give her easy answers, so I had to actually know things. Jordan was quiet for a moment, too. I respect that, he said, not as a social pleasantry, as a genuine statement. Then he said, Can I ask you something that might be too direct for a first date? I prefer direct. What made you actually come tonight? Because you don't strike me as someone who does things she doesn't want to do. Amelia looked at him across the table. This was a test of some kind, she knew. Not a test he was administering deliberately, more the kind that emerges naturally when someone asks a real question and actually intends to hear the real answer. She could give him the surface version, a friend convinced me. I figured it couldn't hurt. It's been a while and I'm trying to stay open. All of that was true. None of it was the truth. Diane told me you were a single father, she said, and that when she mentioned that you followed up about her mother's surgery, you did it like it was the most natural thing in the world. She paused. I've been on enough dates in the last 3 years to know that most people ask questions because they think it makes them look good, not because they actually care about the answer. Another pause. The follow-up suggests you actually cared. Jordan was quiet for a moment. My dad taught me that, he said. He used to say that remembering what matters to people is the relationship. Everything else is just proximity. Amelia looked at him. Your father sounds like a remarkable man. He was. Past tense. Brief. He didn't elaborate and she didn't push, but she noted it. She noted everything. 40 minutes into the meal, the accident happened. Olivia reached for her juice with the particular confidence of a child who has not yet developed a fully calibrated spatial sense, and the glass went over directly across the table, spreading a bright orange arc across the white tablecloth and narrowly avoiding Jordan's sleeve. Amelia was on her feet before the glass stopped rolling. Oh God, I'm so sorry. She grabbed her napkin. Olivia, we need to... It's okay, Jordan said. It's not she, Amelia. His voice was calm. Not the strained calm of a man suppressing irritation. Actually calm. It's juice. It's a tablecloth. He was already handing Olivia a dry napkin. Hey, it happens. You okay? Olivia, who had gone very still the way children go still when they're braced for consequences, looked at him warily. I didn't mean to. I know you didn't. Accidents are called accidents because nobody means them. He helped her dab at the table. Your mom and I will handle this. You keep working on your drawing. Amelia sat back down slowly. She looked at the table, then at Jordan. She can be a lot sometimes, Amelia said, and heard the moment she said it, that the words were reflexive, a defense mechanism, an apology she had been trained by years of other people's discomfort to offer before anyone asked for it. Jordan looked at her. A lot, he repeated. She felt the words land differently than she had expected. She's 5, he said. Not unkindly, not correcting her. Just clarifying the way you clarify something that doesn't need to be complicated. She's supposed to be curious. She's supposed to make messes. A kid who never spilled anything would be the one I'd worry about. Amelia looked at her hands. She had apologized for her daughter's existence in some form or another on every date she had ever been on. Not explicitly, but in the way she managed Olivia, carefully, preemptively, always smoothing the edges of her daughter's presence so that whoever was across the table could comfortably pretend that Olivia wasn't really there. She had done it so many times she hadn't even noticed she was still doing it. I've gotten used to people finding her inconvenient, Amelia said. She said it quietly, not looking for sympathy, just saying a true thing. Then you've been spending time with the wrong people. She looked up. He wasn't looking at her with pity. He wasn't looking at her with the performative empathy of someone who knows they're supposed to say the right thing. He was looking at her the way he'd looked at Olivia's drawing, with actual attention. Like he was seeing her and deciding what he saw was worth seeing. I've spent the last 3 years assuming that when a man saw me and Olivia together, the math he was doing was about what he'd be giving up, she said. What he'd have to tolerate. That's not the math I do. What math do you do? He was quiet for a moment. Then, I think about what a kid like that needs and whether I'm someone who could actually give it to her. A pause. The answer determines everything else. Amelia stared at him. You don't even know us, she said. No, he agreed. But I've been watching for 45 minutes, and I know that that little girl checks with you before she trusts anyone. I know she's testing me right now even while she's drawing. And I know she gave me her drawing, which I suspect she doesn't give to everybody. He glanced at Olivia, who appeared deeply absorbed in her napkin art, but whose ears Amelia knew were doing their own surveillance. I don't know your whole story, but I know enough to know that whoever made you think you needed to apologize for her was wrong. Amelia didn't say anything, because there was nothing to say to that, because the person who had made her feel that way had been her husband. And the agreement with what Jordan had just said was so complete that it required no addition. She just looked at him. And Jordan looked back, and for a moment, just one moment, Amelia Carter, CEO, single mother, divorce survivor, woman who had spent 3 years building walls so efficiently she had almost convinced herself they were load-bearing. That woman felt something she had not felt since before any of the hard things had happened. She felt like someone was in the room with her, not near her, not performing nearness, actually there. She picked up her wine glass. Tell me about Zoe, she said, and the expression that came over Jordan Mitchell's face at the mention of his daughter's name was the thing that decided it. It was the same expression Amelia knew lived on her own face when someone asked about Olivia. Not pride exactly, or not only pride. Something more complicated, more primary. The particular love of a parent who knows that their child is the truest thing they have ever been part of. He pulled out his phone, turned it toward her, a little girl with long braids and a missing front tooth, and the brightest, most unguarded smile Amelia had ever seen was frozen mid-laugh in the photo, holding a fish on a dock somewhere. She caught that all by herself, Jordan said. She was terrified of the worm the whole time, but she wasn't going to admit it. Held that thing like it was made of glass. He smiled at the photo. She's tougher than me. I think she has been since the beginning. She's beautiful, Amelia said. She's everything. Jordan said simply. Amelia looked at the photo, then at Jordan, then without fully intending to, at her daughter who had looked up from her napkin drawing just long enough to observe the two adults with the particular combination of attention and discretion that in Amelia's understanding represented Olivia's highest level of interest. Then Olivia looked back down. But in the half-second before she did, she had caught her mother's eyes, and Olivia, who was 5 and allegedly coloring, gave her mother the smallest, most deliberate nod. He passes. They stayed until the restaurant dimmed its lights, which was how you knew at Hartley's that they were gently suggesting you let them close. Jordan walked them to the curb. Amelia called for her car. Olivia, who had crossed the threshold from awake into the underwater state that precedes sleep, leaned against her mother's side with her eyes half closed and Mr. Bunny's tucked under her arm. "Thank you," Amelia said, "for tonight. Thank you for coming." He paused. "Both of you." She looked at him. "You didn't ask me what my company does, or what my revenue was last quarter, or whether I thought AI would replace most jobs in the next decade." A pause. "Those are the 3 questions I get on most dates. I figured if I wanted to know about the company, I could read about it," he said. "I wanted to know about you." She studied him. "And what did you find out?" Jordan thought about this for a moment, with visible seriousness, like it was a question that deserved an actual answer. "I found out that you read history so you can give your daughter honest answers about the world. I found out that you apologize for things that don't need apologies, which means someone taught you to do that, and I think that was wrong. I found out that you're watching me a lot more carefully than you're letting on." He paused. "And I found out that when Olivia smiles, your whole face changes. Not the way people's faces change when they're performing for someone else. The way a person's face changes when they see something that matters to them." The car arrived. Amelia looked at him for a moment without speaking. Then she said, "Diane said you might want to do this again." "I do." "With Olivia." "Of course with Olivia." She held his gaze. "Most people say that. Most people mean something else." "I know," he said. And then, because he was a man who apparently believed in being clear, "I'm not most people." She believed him. She didn't know why she believed him, not yet. Not with the kind of evidence she usually required before extending that kind of trust. But she believed him. Maybe it was the drawing. Maybe it was the juice. Maybe it was no man wants to raise another man's child, still living in the cavity behind her sternum, and the way Jordan Mitchell had spent an entire evening dismantling the premise of it without even knowing it existed. She opened the car door, guided Olivia in. Then she looked back. "Good night, Jordan." "Good night, Amelia." A pause. From the back seat, half asleep, Olivia's voice. "Good night, Jordan. Mr. Bunny says thank you for the bread." Jordan laughed, real unguarded, the kind that comes from the chest. "Tell Mr. Bunny's he's welcome any time." The door closed. The car pulled away. Amelia didn't look back. But she wanted to. And that after 3 years of making sure she never wanted to felt like something worth noticing. She would think about it later alone in her living room, the apartment quiet the way it only got after Olivia was asleep. She would sit with a cup of tea she didn't drink and replay the evening with the methodical attention she gave to anything that mattered. She would think about how he hadn't flinched, how he had crouched down, how he had asked about the drawing, and she would sit with the unfamiliar, slightly terrifying sensation of a wall. One of the good, strong, necessary ones she had built so carefully over so many years, developing its first crack. Not crumbling, not collapsing, just one crack. Hairline thin. But there. The second date happened 8 days later. Not because Amelia planned it that way. She had told herself she would wait 2 weeks, give herself enough distance to evaluate what had happened at Hartley's with the kind of clear-eyed objectivity she applied to everything that mattered. She had a system. She had always had a system. You gathered data, you assessed risk, you made a decision based on evidence rather than feeling. The problem was that Olivia woke up on Sunday morning, 4 days after the dinner, climbed into bed next to Amelia at 6:45 and said without preamble, "When are we going to see Jordan again?" Amelia stared at the ceiling. "We just met him, baby." "I know." Olivia was quiet for a moment, arranging Mr. Bunnies against the pillow with careful precision. "But I think he was telling the truth." "About what?" Olivia turned to look at her mother with the directness that Amelia both loved and found slightly unnerving. "About us being important." Amelia didn't say anything for a moment. "How do you know?" she finally asked. "Because he remembered Mr. Bunnies," Olivia said, as if this were the most obvious metric in the world. "People who are pretending don't remember the small things." Amelia turned her head and looked at her daughter. 5 years old. 5 years old, and already she knew that. Already she had figured out the thing that had taken Amelia 34 years and one failed marriage to learn. She texted Jordan that afternoon. His response came in under 3 minutes. "I was hoping you would." Saturday. She typed back, "Olivia wants to know if Zoe can come." A pause. Then, "I was going to ask the same thing." They met at Lincoln Park. Jordan's idea, neutral ground open space, the kind of environment where two children who had never met could exist without the pressure of a formal setting. Amelia arrived first and was standing near the fountain when she saw Jordan walking toward her with a little girl who could only be Zoe. She was everything the photograph had suggested, and more. Tall for 6, with Jordan's same quiet steadiness, somehow already in her posture, braids with purple beads at the ends that clicked together when she moved. She was holding her father's hand but looking everywhere, cataloging the park, the people, the pigeons, the sky with the focused attention of someone experiencing the world as a continuous source of information. Olivia, standing next to Amelia, saw her and went very still. The particular stillness of a child encountering another child they're not yet sure about. Jordan reached them and said, "Amelia," with that same unhurried ease he'd had at the restaurant, not a performance, just a man who was comfortable arriving. Then he looked down at Olivia. "Professor Gallup's artist. Good to see you again." Olivia almost smiled, held it back by approximately 1 millimeter. "Hi." Jordan crouched down slightly and said to Zoe, "This is Amelia, and this is Olivia." Zoe looked at Olivia. Olivia looked at Zoe. The entire negotiation that happened in the next 4 seconds was conducted entirely without words, and entirely without adults. And by the end of it, something had been established that neither Amelia nor Jordan fully understood, but both recognized as significant. Then Zoe said, pointing at Mr. Bunnies, "Is that rabbit real?" "No," Olivia said. "Can I hold him?" A pause that felt longer than it was. Then Olivia held Mr. Bunnies out. Zoe took him with 2 hands, which was the right way to hold someone else's stuffed animal. And Amelia saw Jordan notice this, the same way she did a small thing that said something large. "His name is Mr. Bunnies," Olivia said. "That's a good name," Zoe said seriously. "It's clear." Olivia blinked, then nodded. "That's what I thought." And just like that, they were walking ahead of the adults, already in conversation, about something that neither Amelia nor Jordan could fully hear, and Amelia watched them go with the feeling of witnessing something she hadn't expected to witness today. Jordan came to stand beside her. "Zoe's been nervous about this all week," he said quietly. "She didn't look nervous. She never does." He watched his daughter. "She gets that from her grandmother, holds everything inside until she processes it, then moves forward like she's been sure the whole time." A slight pause. "Took me years to learn to read it." Amelia watched Olivia hand Zoe a crayon from the small bag she'd brought. Olivia always brought crayons the way other people carried phones, and Zoe accepted it and immediately used it to point at something in the distance, apparently explaining something to Olivia with the crayon as a pointer. "She's explaining the park," Jordan said. "She's never been here before," Amelia said. "Doesn't matter to Zoe. If she doesn't know something, she makes a theory and commits to it until she gets better information." He almost smiled. It's terrifying when she's wrong about something important. But mostly, she's not. She's 6. She's an old soul, he said, simply, without the performance of a parent bragging. Just a man stating something he had observed to be true. They walked. The girls stayed a few yards ahead, their conversation, a continuous murmur that occasionally broke into brief laughter. Amelia and Jordan walked in the particular rhythm of two people who are trying to get to know each other while also monitoring children, which meant the conversation moved in starts and stops and interrupted itself constantly. And somehow, because of that, felt more honest than most conversations Amelia had in conference rooms where no one was distracted and everyone was performing. "Tell me about being a mechanic," she said. He glanced at her. "That's not what most people lead with." "What do most people lead with?" "Usually something like, 'That must be interesting,' which means they don't think it's interesting." She laughed, actually laughed, short and genuine. "Okay, is it interesting?" "It's the best job I've ever had," he said without hesitation. "You're responsible for something that carries 300 people 35,000 feet in the air. There's no faking it. You either did the work right or you didn't. And if you didn't..." He stopped. "The consequences are real," she said. "The consequences don't have a second chance," he said. "Which means every time I show up completely. No off days, no phoning it in." He glanced at her. "I think that's why I love it. Because it requires all of me." Amelia looked at him. "That's how I feel about Vertex." "I know," he said. "I read a piece about you last week, the one in the Tribune from a couple years ago." She felt her shoulders tighten slightly, the automatic defensiveness that came from years of being written about in ways that emphasized the wrong things. And the reporter spent 6 paragraphs describing what you were wearing," Jordan said, "which told me more about the reporter than about you." Amelia stared ahead. "What did it tell you about me?" "That you finished the interview anyway, and gave him enough to fill the piece, because you knew that the story, even a flawed version, would be useful for the company." He paused. "You did the work even when the context was unfair." She was quiet for a moment. "I do that a lot." "I know." "Does it..." She stopped herself. "Does it what?" She had been about to ask, "Does it bother you, the ambition, the career, the fact that I am by most conventional metrics a lot to absorb?" But those were the questions she asked out of the habit of pre-apologizing, and she was trying to stop doing that. "Nothing," she said. "Never mind." Jordan stopped walking. She stopped too. He looked at her with the directness that she was starting to understand was simply how he operated. Not aggressive, not performative. Just honest. "You were going to ask if my ambition bothers me." "My ambition," she corrected. "Right." He studied her. "Why do you assume it would?" "Because it has." "Who told you that?" "My ex-husband." The words landed in the air between them, with a weight that the park noise didn't dissolve. Jordan didn't look away from her. "He was wrong," Jordan said. "You don't know enough about it to say that." "I know enough about that," he said. "A man who tells a woman her ambition is a problem is a man who wanted a woman he didn't have to compete with, which means he didn't want you. He wanted a version of you with the parts that scared him removed." A pause. "That's not about you. That's about him." Amelia looked at him for a long moment. "You're very direct," she said. "I've found it saves time." "Doesn't it scare people off?" "The wrong ones," he said. "The right ones seem to handle it." She held his gaze for another second. Then she turned forward and started walking again. He fell into step beside her. "My ex-wife left because I was boring," he said after a moment, offering it the same way she had offered her disclosure, without performance, without bid for sympathy. Just a true thing handed over because the conversation had earned it. Amelia glanced at him. Boring. Her word. What she meant was that I was never going to be someone who chased something bigger than the life I was already living. I liked my job. I liked my neighborhood. He paused. I liked being home, being present, knowing where I was. A pause. She needed someone with more velocity, more forward motion. I understood it. It still took me about a year to stop being angry about it. Are you still angry? No? He said it simply the way people say things that have been fully processed. I'm grateful. Because if she'd stayed, we'd have been miserable, and Zoe would have grown up watching two people perform a marriage they'd both stopped believing in. He watched his daughter ahead of them, now apparently conducting a very serious examination of a pigeon with Olivia's guidance. I got Zoe full-time. I got to be there for every morning and every nightmare and every first thing. I wouldn't trade that for anything she could have given me if she'd stayed. Amelia thought about that. She thought about Marcus, about all the ways she had tried in the first year after the divorce to reframe the ending as something other than failure. She had told herself it was a beginning, a necessary rupture, a clarification. She had not quite managed to get to gratitude. I'm not there yet, she admitted. With the gratitude. How long has it been? 3 years. It took me almost 2, he said. And I had help. Zoe helped. Watching her be okay, watching her be more than okay, that helped. He paused. What helps you? Amelia looked ahead at Olivia, who had abandoned the pigeon investigation and was now apparently telling Zoe something very important involving significant hand gestures. Her, she said. Just her. Jordan nodded. They walked. An hour into the afternoon, they found a bench and sat while the girls played 15 feet away in a clearing of grass that they had apparently designated as their territory. Zoe had discovered that Olivia could draw anything on demand you named it. Olivia drew it fast and accurate, and the two of them had established an assembly line. Zoe commissioned, Olivia produced, and both of them were deeply satisfied with this arrangement. She's going to charge admission next, Jordan said. She already charges at home, Amelia said. She made me pay 2 stickers to see the mural she did on her bedroom wall. The wall she wasn't supposed to draw on. The very same. I was too impressed to be properly angry, which I think was her calculation. Jordan laughed. Zoe did that with a hammer and a loose floorboard in the kitchen. I came home one day and she had excavated a section of the floor because she wanted to see what was under it. What was under it? More floor. He shook his head. She was genuinely surprised. She'd been expecting something interesting. Took it very personally that the universe had disappointed her. Amelia smiled. They're so certain about everything. They haven't been disappointed enough yet, he said. Not the kind of disappointed that teaches you to expect less. He was quiet for a moment. I think about that sometimes. How long she gets to keep that certainty before the world starts eroding it. How do you protect it? He looked at her. I don't try to protect her from disappointment. I try to protect her sense that she can survive it. That when something is hard or unfair or wrong, she still has herself, and me. He paused. I think that's all you can do. You can't keep the world from being the world, but you can make sure they know they're not facing it alone. Amelia felt that sentence move through her in a way she hadn't expected, because that was exactly what she had been trying to do for Olivia since the beginning. That was the whole project, and she had never heard it articulated that precisely. Yes, she said, quietly. Just that. And Jordan looked at her, and something passed between them that wasn't quite words and wasn't quite silence. Something that existed in the narrow space between recognition and trust, where two people realize they are operating from the same coordinates without having shown each other the map. Can I ask you something? Amelia said. Yeah. When you walked toward Olivia first at the restaurant, before you even acknowledged me. She paused. Was that deliberate? He considered the question seriously. Yes and no. I knew you were coming with her. I'd thought about it before I got there. I knew that if I ignored her or treated her like a complication, I was telling you something true about myself, just not something good. He paused. But when I actually saw her standing there, holding that rabbit, looking at me like she was deciding something important, I wasn't following a strategy anymore. I just wanted her to know she was seen." He shrugged slightly. "She's 5. She reads everything. She knew before you did whether that room was safe." Amelia looked at him. "She told me you passed." "How?" She nodded. Jordan was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad," he said. "She's the one that matters most." "She is," Amelia said. "She always will be." "I know." He met her eyes. "I'm not asking you to change that math." She studied him. "Most men do, eventually. I'm aware," he said. "I think some men confuse wanting to be a woman's priority with wanting to be her only priority. Those are different things." A pause. "I don't need to be Olivia's most important person. I just need to be someone she can trust. The rest sorts itself out." Amelia turned to look at the girls. Zoe had commissioned apparently a very complex drawing. Olivia was working on it with unusual concentration. Tongue, visible multiple crayons deployed simultaneously. Zoe was watching with the expression of someone whose vision is being executed to specification. "She's been testing you, you know," Amelia said. "Since we got here." "I know." "She tested you all through dinner, too." "I know." He paused. "She's good at it. She's subtle. She gets that from—" Amelia stopped. "From—" he prompted gently. She was quiet for a moment. It was the question she hadn't intended to open, not today, not this soon. But Jordan had a way of making silences feel like space rather than pressure, and in that space, she found herself moving toward a truth she usually kept carefully stored. "Her mother," she said finally. "Her biological mother." Another pause. "My sister." Jordan turned to look at her. She didn't look back. She kept her eyes on Olivia. "Olivia is adopted," she said. "My sister Dana passed away when Olivia was 3 days old. There was no one else. I was building Vertex. I was in my marriage. She exhaled. "None of that mattered. She was Dana's daughter. She had no one. So I became her mother." The park noise continued around them. Somewhere behind them, someone's dog barked twice. Jordan didn't say anything immediately, and she was glad because the immediate response was always the wrong one. The people who responded immediately were responding to the idea of what she'd said, not to what she'd actually said. He let it be there for a moment. Then he said, "How old was Dana?" 27. Another moment. "I'm sorry," he said. And it sounded like what it was, not a social reflex, but an actual expression of sorrow for an actual loss. "Was she—" He paused. "What was she like?" Amelia turned to look at him. No one had asked her that, not in the context of this story. People asked about the logistics, the adoption process, the legal complexity, how she managed it alongside the company. People asked about Olivia. No one had ever in telling this story asked about Dana. Her throat tightened. "She was louder than me," Amelia said. "In every way. She walked into rooms like they'd been waiting for her. She laughed at things I thought were too complicated to be funny. She paused. "She was the first person who ever made me feel like my intensity wasn't a flaw. She thought I was funny. Not because I was trying to be, but because she understood how I thought." Another pause. "She would have been an extraordinary mother." "She is one," Jordan said quietly. "Through Olivia." Amelia looked at him. "The way Olivia watches things, reads people, the subtlety." He nodded toward the girls. "That's Dana in her. You said so yourself." Amelia didn't speak for a moment. She looked at Olivia. She had thought that privately late at night, in the way you allow yourself to think things you don't say aloud. She had seen Dana in the angle of Olivia's attention, in the laugh that came too big for the joke, in the way she walked into a room like she had already decided it was worth entering. She had thought it. She had never said it. "Yes," she said. Her voice was not entirely steady. "Yes, she is." Jordan said nothing more about it. He didn't try to comfort her, not with words, not with the kind of reflexive physical gesture that would have felt intrusive. He just sat there fully present, and let her have the moment. That restraint. That recognition of when presence was the right response and noise was the wrong one. It moved her more than any comfort would have. They stayed until the light started to shift, that late afternoon change in October. Light that happens quickly and feels significant, the way all endings do when you realize you didn't prepare for them. The girls had graduated from drawing to some kind of elaborate game involving the crayons as characters, which seemed to have its own mythology and rules that neither adult was invited to know. When they finally gathered the girls, Zoe looked up at Jordan with the expression of a child who has reached a conclusion. "Daddy," she said, "Olivia knows everything about horses." "She does." Jordan looked at Olivia. Olivia gave the half shrug of someone accepting accurate praise, specifically about their professional achievements. Jordan glanced at Amelia with the expression of a man who understood he was in the presence of something special. They walked to the parking lot together. The girls held hands, which had not been negotiated or suggested by any adult. It had simply happened somewhere in the crayon mythology. And Amelia noticed it the way you notice something small that carries disproportionate weight. At the cars, Jordan stopped. He crouched down to Zoe's level. "Tell Olivia goodbye." Zoe turned to Olivia with the gravity of a child conducting a formal farewell. "I'll see you next time," she said. Not maybe, not hopefully, next time, stated as fact. Olivia received this with equal gravity. "Bring your own crayons," she said. "I will. I'll start a new collection." "For what?" Olivia considered. "Flying horses, because Professor Gallup told me she wants to see the world." Zoe looked at this information seriously. "I'll research what wings look like." "Good." Jordan stood. He looked at Amelia. "Next Saturday," he said. Not a question, not quite, but soft enough to remain one if she needed it to be. "Next Saturday," she said. He nodded. Something in his face settled, not relief exactly, something quieter than relief. "Thank you," he said, "for telling me about Dana." She looked at him. "I don't usually tell that story." "I know," he said. "Thank you for trusting me with it." She opened her car door, guided Olivia in. Then she paused with her hand on the door. "Jordan." He looked at her. "Diane said you were kind," she said. "I want you to know that she underestimated it considerably." Something moved across his face that she couldn't entirely name. Not pride, not pleasure. Something more internal than either. "Drive safe," he said. She got in the car. As she pulled out of the lot, Olivia spoke from the back seat. "Mommy." "Yeah, baby. I like Zoe. I know you do. She's going to be my best friend." Amelia glanced in the rearview mirror. "You've known her for 3 hours." "I know," Olivia said simply. "That's enough time." Amelia looked back at the road. That's enough time. She thought about that for the rest of the drive home. The weeks that followed had a texture that was different from anything Amelia had experienced since before the marriage fell apart. There was no dramatic declaration, no turning point she could point to, exactly. Just a slow accumulation of Saturdays and the occasional weekday evening of phone calls that started at 9 and ended at 11, without either of them deciding to end them, of the two girls building a private world out of crayons and elaborate horse mythology, and Zoe's insistence on researching everything before committing to an opinion. It was not simple. Amelia was not capable of simple, and she had come to terms with that. There were evenings when she pulled back, when she found herself standing in the middle of a conversation with Jordan, and suddenly feeling the specific fear that comes from having invested something real. The fear that said you're in too far. You've let too much be possible. When this ends and everything ends, you will have further to fall. On one of those evenings, Jordan noticed. They were on the phone. Olivia asleep. The apartment quiet, both of them at the end of a long day. And Amelia had gone quiet in the middle of a conversation about something inconsequential and the quality of her silence was different from the comfortable silence they'd developed, and Jordan heard the difference. "Where did you go?" he asked. "I'm here." "You're there," he said. "But you went somewhere in your head. What was it?" She considered deflecting. She was good at deflecting. "I got scared," she said instead. "Of what?" "Of this." A pause. "Of how much of this I want." He was quiet for a moment. "Amelia," he said, "I need you to hear something." "Okay." "I'm not Marcus." 3 words, 4 syllables. She closed her eyes. "I know that," she said. "Do you?" "Because I think sometimes when you pull back, you're not pulling back from me. You're pulling back from what he told you was true." He paused. "He told you that you were too much, that your ambition made you difficult, that no one would want to take on everything you came with." Another pause. "And I think part of you is still waiting for me to confirm it." She didn't speak. "I'm not going to confirm it," he said. "Not because I'm performing something for you, because it's not true. You are not too much. You are exactly enough. And Olivia is not a burden anyone has to manage. She's a person who is going to do extraordinary things, and the man who gets to be part of her life gets something rare." His voice was steady and unhurried. "I know what I'm walking toward. I've known for a while, and I need you to trust that I know my own mind." Amelia sat in the dark of her living room. "I'm trying," she said after a moment. "I know," he said. "I'm not asking you to stop trying. I'm asking you to try believing what the evidence shows, not what he told you." "What does the evidence show?" "That I keep showing up," he said simply. "That's the whole case. I keep showing up." She thought about that. She thought about the first dinner, the way he had walked toward Olivia, the crayons, the bench in the park, the way he had asked about Dana and then asked what Dana was like, and how no one had ever asked her that before. She thought about a man who kept showing up. "Okay," she said, quietly. "Okay. I'm going to try to believe the evidence." She could hear something shift in his breathing, a slight release. "That's all I'm asking. Don't make me regret it," she said. "I won't," he said. And the certainty in his voice was not the certainty of a promise made carelessly. It was the certainty of a man who understood the weight of what he was saying and said it anyway. They stayed on the phone for another hour after that, not talking about anything particularly important. Just there. Just 2 people in the dark of their respective apartments. Children asleep down their respective hallways, choosing quietly without ceremony to keep being in each other's lives. It wasn't romantic in the way movies made romance look. It was better than that. It was real. 3 months after that first dinner at Hartley's on a Friday evening in late January, Amelia was working late at the office when her phone lit up with a text from Jordan. "Zoe asked me today if Olivia is her sister." She stared at the message. "What did you say?" she typed back. A pause. "Then I said that some families are built slowly, and that the most important ones are the ones where everybody chooses to stay." She said, "So is that a yes?" Amelia felt something break loose in her chest. "What did you say?" she typed again. Another pause. Longer this time. Then I said, "Ask me again in a year." And she said, "Okay, I'm putting it in my calendar." Amelia sat in her empty office with her phone in her hand, and the city lights pressing through the windows, and something happening in her chest that she did not have precise words for, something that was not quite happiness, because happiness was too simple, too clean. This was bigger than happiness. This was the feeling of a life being rebuilt from the inside out, not because someone had saved you, but because someone had simply, steadily, patiently, with their whole attention, refused to leave. She typed back, "Tell Zoe I'm putting it in my calendar too." His response was immediate. A single emoji, a small yellow laughing face. And Amelia Carter, CEO, single mother woman who had built walls as a survival strategy and kept the architectural plans in case she needed to rebuild them, laughed alone in her office at 9:30 on a Friday night. And it was the most unguarded sound she had made in 3 years. The calendar entry Zoe made was real. Jordan told Amelia about it 2 weeks later casually, the way he told her most things without drama or setup. Just a fact being handed over because they had reached the point where facts moved freely between them. Zoe had opened the calendar app on Jordan's phone, navigated to a date exactly 1 year from the conversation, and typed, "Ask Daddy if Olivia is my sister." He said ask again. Jordan had found it when he was checking his schedule for work. He'd stood in the kitchen for a full minute just looking at it. "Did you delete it?" Amelia asked. "No," he said. "I'm not deleting that." She was quiet on her end of the phone. "She's going to ask," he said, "and I want to have an answer ready." Amelia understood what he meant. He wasn't pressuring her. She had learned by now to distinguish between Jordan stating something true and Jordan pushing for something. This was the former. He was telling her with his characteristic directness that the question was coming, that it was legitimate, and that he intended to be honest when it arrived. "Okay," she said. "Okay, you hear me, or okay, you're ready?" "Both?" she said. "I think." He let that stand without pushing further. That was February. The winter had settled into the kind of deep cold that Chicago specializes in, the kind that isn't dramatic, just relentless, the kind that makes everything slightly harder and slightly slower, and tests whether things that seemed strong in October still hold their shape under sustained pressure. Their relationship held, more than held. It deepened in the way that relationships deepen when the initial energy of newness gives way to something less electric and more structural. The kind of knowing that comes not from grand moments, but from accumulated small ones. Jordan. Knowing that Amelia's voice changed slightly when she was running on less than 5 hours of sleep. Amelia knowing that Jordan went quiet when something was wrong at work. Not distant quiet, but inward quiet, processing quiet. And that the right response was to leave space and let him come out the other side on his own timeline. Zoe learning that Olivia could be bribed with the opportunity to name things, her drawings, her collections, theoretical horses. Olivia learning that Zoe researched everything before she committed to it, and that if you presented Zoe with a question she didn't know the answer to, her face went through 6 distinct expressions in rapid succession that were worth watching. The girls had moved past the assembly line arrangement into something less defined and more genuine. They didn't always get along. Zoe was methodical, and Olivia was instinctive, and those two things occasionally collided with the intensity that only children manage, complete, total, briefly catastrophic, and forgotten within 20 minutes. Amelia had witnessed 2 such collisions and had been more struck each time by how Jordan handled them. He didn't pick sides. He didn't perform fairness in the way adults sometimes do, the performative neutrality that children see through instantly. He just sat with whichever child was most upset, waited for the peak of it to pass, and then asked one question. What happened from the beginning? Not whose fault. Not what were you thinking. Just tell me what happened. And something about the simplicity of that question, the way it implied that the story mattered, that he would listen to the whole thing, diffused things in a way that surprised Amelia every time she watched it. She started using it with Olivia. It worked. She told Jordan that. He looked faintly embarrassed and said, "My dad used to do it. I'm just passing it forward." Then he looked at the table and said quieter, "Feels good to pass something good forward." That was the thing about Jordan Mitchell that kept arriving like a slow revelation. He was constantly quietly in conversation with the man his father had been and the man he was trying to be, and he never performed that conversation for an audience. It just showed up in how he handled things. Amelia found it more affecting than she had words for. The trouble started on a Thursday in March. It didn't announce itself. It never did. Amelia was at the office, a quarterly all-hands meeting that had run 40 minutes long because her VP of product had introduced a slide deck that raised more questions than it answered, and Amelia had spent those 40 minutes conducting the particular discipline of listening patiently in public, while her internal monologue ran considerably faster. By the time the meeting ended, it was past 7. Olivia was already at the apartment with their nanny, and Amelia was gathering her coat when her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number. Chicago area code. She almost let it go to voicemail. She answered. "Is this Amelia Carter?" A woman's voice. Crisp, slightly formal. "It is. Who's calling?" "My name is Patricia Morrow. I'm a journalist with the Chicago Standard. I'm working on a profile piece about you. Your career, Vertex's trajectory. Your personal story. I was hoping to speak with you before we go to print." Amelia stopped putting on her coat. "I haven't agreed to any profile with the Standard." "No," Patricia Morrow said. "The piece isn't contingent on your participation, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to respond to some of the material we've gathered." Amelia felt the familiar cold clarity that came with threat. Her voice didn't change. "What material?" "We've spoken with several people in your orbit, past and present. Your ex-husband's attorney provided some context around your divorce. We have information about your daughter's adoption, specifically that Olivia is not biologically yours, and the circumstances around that." A pause that was precisely calibrated. "We also have information about the financial decisions you made at Vertex during the period immediately following your sister's death decisions that some of your early investors describe as, quote, emotionally compromised." The office had emptied around her. She was standing alone near the window, with the city below her, and her heartbeat entirely steady, which was the thing she had learned to do under pressure. Let everything go still, while her mind moved fast. "Who are your sources?" she said. "I can't share that. But I can tell you that we're planning to run the piece in 10 days. I wanted to give you the chance. I'll have my communications director reach you in the morning," Amelia said. "Don't contact me directly again." She hung up. She stood at the window for 90 seconds. Then she called Jordan. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, how is the—" "I need to tell you something," she said. "And I need to tell you now, before you read it somewhere else." A beat of silence. When he spoke, his voice had shifted into the mode she recognized, not alarm, but full attention. "I'm listening. There's a journalist. She's running a piece about me. She has information about Olivia's adoption, and she's going to publish it." Amelia paused. "The whole story. Dana. How I became Olivia's mother. All of it." "Okay," Jordan said. "That's not the part I'm calling about." "What's the part you're calling about?" She took a breath. Not for composure, she was already composed. For honesty. "I haven't told Olivia," she said. "The full truth. She knows I'm her mommy. She knows she's mine, but she doesn't know about Dana. She doesn't know she was adopted. I've been waiting until she was older, until I thought she could hold it." Her voice remained even. "If this piece runs the way this woman is describing, Olivia might find out from someone at school, from the internet, from someone reading it aloud in front of her." The silence on Jordan's end was the kind that meant he was thinking. Not panicking, not reacting, thinking. "How much time do you have?" he said. 10 days, according to her. Probably less if they want to make a splash with the online version. "Can your legal team stop it?" "They can try. They can slow it. They can't kill it if her sources are who I think they are." She paused. Marcus knew everything. If he talked to her attorney, would he do that? She was quiet for a moment. "I'd like to say no. But Marcus does things when he's angry that he wouldn't do otherwise, and we've been in a dispute about Olivia's school arrangement for the last 2 months." She exhaled. "He doesn't have legal standing. Olivia is fully and legally mine, but he has information. And anger." Jordan was quiet again. "Amelia," he said finally. "Yeah. The story about Dana and Olivia. That's a beautiful story. You know that, right?" She felt something tighten in her throat. "I know what it is to me." "It's going to be what it is to anyone with a heart," he said. "The journalist thinks she has a scandal. What she actually has is a story about a woman who gave up everything to give a child a home." A pause. "Let me ask you something. The investors she mentioned, the ones who said your decisions were emotionally compromised. Is that true?" Amelia thought about it. "About the 3 months after Dana died and Olivia came home. About the decisions she'd made in that period, some of which she would make again, and some of which she wouldn't. About the acquisition she'd passed on because she couldn't focus. About the partnership she'd pushed through because she needed the structure of a win. Some of them, she said honestly, I was not at my best. But Vertex survived. Vertex thrived. Then the decisions, whatever they were, didn't break the company. No. Okay, Jordan said. So the worst she has is that you made some imperfect choices during the worst months of your life, and the company survived anyway. He paused. That's not a scandal, Amelia. That's a human being. She pressed her hand flat against the window glass. The cold came through from the other side. The part I'm most afraid of, she said quietly enough that it required effort to say it at all, is Olivia. I know. If she finds out this way... She won't, Jordan said. You're going to tell her. She's 5. She's almost 6, and she's Olivia. His voice was steady and certain. She knows more than you think she knows. She's been processing her world carefully since the moment you described her to me. You don't protect her by waiting. You protect her by being the one who tells her the truth first. Amelia pressed her eyes closed, because she knew he was right. She had known it at some level for months. The waiting had felt like protection, and had actually been fear, her fear, not Olivia's need. I don't know how, she said. I don't know how to explain death to a 5-year-old. I don't know how to explain what adoption means without making her feel like she wasn't chosen, Jordan said. Yes, tell her she was chosen, he said simply. Because she was. You chose her the moment you decided there was no version of the future where she didn't have a home. That's not a complicated story. That's the most straightforward love story I've ever heard. Amelia stood at the window for a long moment. The city continued below her, indifferent and luminous. Will you be there? She said. When I tell her. Not in the room, I think it needs to be just us, but nearby. I'll be wherever you need me, he said. Always. She nodded, though he couldn't see it. Jordan, she said. Yeah. The journalist also mentioned... She stopped, started again. There are going to be things in this piece about my personal life, about relationships. If your name comes up, or Zoe's, let it come up, he said, immediately, without hesitation. You don't know what she might say. I don't care what she says, he said. I know what's true. Zoe knows what's true. You know what's true. A pause. I'm not hiding from a journalist. It could affect your work. Your people might. Amelia. His voice was quiet, but entirely firm. Stop trying to protect me from being associated with you. She stopped. I mean it, he said. That's what you're doing. You're trying to give me an exit in case this gets uncomfortable. And I need you to hear me when I tell you I don't want the exit. I want to be here. For whatever this is. A pause. Let me be here. She didn't trust her voice for a moment. Okay, she managed. Okay, he said. Now go home and be with Olivia tonight. Just be with her. You don't have to say anything tonight. Just be her mom. That I can do, she said. I know. She put on her coat. She picked up her bag. She stood in the empty office one more moment. I'm scared, she said. She never said that. She had said it to him twice now, and both times it had cost her something, and both times he had received it as though it were entirely reasonable, as though a strong woman being scared was not a contradiction, but just a complete truth. I know, he said. Be scared and do it anyway. That's all brave is. She told Olivia on a Sunday morning. Not with preparation or props or the carefully designed approach she had spent 4 days constructing in her head. She told her in the kitchen over cereal because Olivia had asked without any apparent trigger, with the sudden directness that children deploy when the thought has been forming for a while. Mommy, where did I come from? Amelia set down her coffee cup. The question could mean a lot of things at 5 years and 10 months. It could mean the biological basics. It could mean something geographical. It could mean something she'd overheard at school. What made you think of that? Amelia asked. Olivia stirred her cereal. Emma at school says babies come from mommy's tummies. But I asked Mrs. Patterson, and she said sometimes babies come from other places too. She looked up. Did I come from your tummy? Amelia looked at her daughter. She thought about Jordan's voice, the most straightforward love story I've ever heard. No, baby, she said. You didn't come from my tummy. Olivia was very still. You came from your first mommy's tummy, Amelia said. Her name was Dana, and she loved you so much that she gave everything she had just to bring you into the world. She kept her voice steady, not falsely bright, just steady. Dana was my little sister, the person I loved most in the world before you, and when she couldn't be here anymore, she left you behind. And I looked at you and I chose you, because you were hers and I was hers, and that made you mine. Olivia was very quiet. Where is Donna? She asked. She's not here anymore, Amelia said. She's gone. But she left you here. And that is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. Olivia looked at her cereal. Then she looked up. Is Dana why you love me so much? She asked. Amelia felt that move through her chest like something physical. No, she said. I love you so much because you are you. Because of the way you draw horses with ambition. Because of Mr. Bunnies. Because of the way you evaluate people before you trust them and then trust them completely. Because of every single thing you are. She paused. Dana is why I got to know you. But you are why I love you. Olivia considered this for a long time. Then she said, Do I look like her? Yes, Amelia said. You have her eyes, and her laugh, and the way she used to walk into a room like it was already hers. Something moved across Olivia's face. Not grief exactly, because grief requires the prior existence of something now absent, and Olivia had no memory to grieve. Something more like the recognition of a connection she hadn't known she was carrying. Can I see a picture? She asked. Yes, Amelia said. We can look at pictures today, as many as you want. Olivia nodded once, very serious, processing. Then she said, Did Jordan know about this? Amelia paused. Yes, I told him. What did he say? He said Dana is still here through you. Olivia was very still again. I think that's right, she said finally, quietly. Then she went back to her cereal, and Amelia sat across from her daughter in the kitchen of the life she had built, and felt the particular kind of undoing that comes not from loss, but from love so large it has nowhere contained enough to live, the kind that spills out of the structures you build for it and refuses to be managed or predicted or protected against. She was crying. She had not intended to cry. But there it was. Olivia looked up, saw her, and did the thing she sometimes did. Climbed out of her chair, walked around the table, and put both small arms around her mother's waist from the side. It's okay, Mommy, she said into Amelia's sleeve. I know, Amelia said. Are you happy, crying, or sad crying? Both, Amelia said. Both at the same time. That's the hardest kind, Olivia said, with the certainty of someone who knew. Yeah, Amelia said. It is. They stayed like that for a while. Olivia didn't let go. Amelia didn't move. And outside the window, Chicago continued without them, the way cities do, indifferent to the private earthquakes happening in kitchens on Sunday mornings. She called Jordan after Olivia had settled onto the couch with the photo albums. There were 3 of them. Dana, across 5 years. Dana holding a newborn. Olivia in the hospital. Dana at 26, looking into a camera with a smile so large it bent the edges of the frame. Olivia sat with each photo with unusual stillness, studying them with the focused attention she usually reserved for complex drawings. Jordan picked up immediately. How did it go? He asked. She asked if she looked like her, Amelia said. What did you say? I said yes. She has her eyes, her laugh. Jordan was quiet for a moment. "How did Olivia handle it?" he asked. "She asked to see pictures," Amelia said. "She's looking at them now." A pause. "She asked what you said when I told you." "What did you tell her?" "What you actually said. That Dana is still here through her." Jordan exhaled slowly. "She said she thought that was right," Amelia said. Another silence. "She's extraordinary," Jordan said. "I know." Amelia leaned against the kitchen wall. "Jordan, the journalist's piece. Whatever she runs, I want you to know that I told Olivia myself. Whatever they print, Olivia heard it from me first." "Good," he said. Simply. No embellishment. Just good. "Thank you," she said, "for telling me to do it." "You already knew," he said. "You'd been knowing. You just needed someone to say it was time." She thought about that. "Marcus called me this morning," she said. The temperature of the silence shifted. "What did he say?" Jordan's voice didn't change register, but something in it went precise in the way it went precise when he was paying the specific kind of attention that excluded everything else. "He said he'd heard I was seeing someone," Amelia said. "He said he hoped I knew what I was doing. He said, and these are his exact words, 'You have a pattern of making decisions emotionally and dealing with the consequences later.'" Is that what he said? Not a question. A receiving. He also said that he hoped whoever I was seeing understood that my life was his word complicated, and that not everyone is equipped for complicated. Jordan was quiet. "What did you say?" he asked. "I said that I appreciated his concern and that I'd take it under advisement," Amelia said. "Because that's what you say to someone who still has the power to make your life difficult if he decides to." "But what did you want to say?" She almost smiled. "I wanted to say that the man I'm seeing already knows everything he said, and that he's still here, and that the difference between him and Marcus is that he considers that information about the opportunity, not the obstacle." Jordan was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You should have said that." "It would have made things worse." "Probably," he said, "but it would have been true." She pushed off from the wall, walked to the doorway, looked into the living room where Olivia was sitting cross-legged on the couch, holding a photograph of Dana with both hands just looking at it. "She's still looking at the pictures," Amelia said. "Let her look," Jordan said. "She's meeting someone." Amelia watched her daughter. "She's meeting someone." "Yes," she said. "She is." They were quiet together for a moment. Two people on the phone, a city's width apart, connected across that distance by the particular intimacy of witnessing the same thing from different vantage points. Then Jordan said, "Can I come over later?" "You don't have to," she said. "I know I don't have to," he said. "Can I come over?" She looked at Olivia, at the photographs, at the Sunday light through the window, and the way it fell across the couch and her daughter and the images of a woman who was gone. "Yes," she said. "Come over." "I'll bring food," he said. "Zoe can come if you want company for Olivia." "She'd like that," Amelia said. "She'd like that a lot." "Okay." A pause. "Amelia." "Yeah, you did the right thing this morning," he said. "It was hard and it was right, and those two things don't usually come separately." She closed her eyes for a second. "I know," she said. "I'll see you in a few hours," he said. She hung up. She stood in the doorway. Olivia looked up from the photograph. She held it out toward her mother. "This one," she said. Amelia came and sat beside her. Looked at the photo. Dana, 24 years old at Christmas, wearing a sweater that was at least 2 sizes too large, laughing at something off camera with the laugh that Amelia had described to Olivia, the one that was too big for any room it happened in. "She looks funny," Olivia said, not unkindly, observationally. "She was," Amelia said. "She was the funniest person I've ever known." Olivia looked at the photo for another moment. "I want to be funny like that," she said. Amelia looked at her daughter. "You already are," she said. Olivia leaned against her, and Amelia put her arm around her daughter and held her carefully the way you hold things that are both fragile and the strongest things you own. Outside the day continued, and somewhere on the other side of the city, Jordan Mitchell was putting on his coat and telling Zoe to get her shoes. They were going to see Olivia, and Zoe said, "Is she okay?" And Jordan said, "She will be." And Zoe, 6 years old and already her father's daughter, in the ways that mattered, grabbed her coat and her shoes and her crayons. She'd started bringing her own crayons as instructed and said, "Then let's go." Jordan arrived at 4:30 with Zoe, a bag of groceries, and the quiet certainty of a man who understood exactly what the afternoon required. He didn't knock with urgency. He didn't arrive with the performative energy of someone coming to rescue a situation. He knocked the way he did everything, steadily at a normal volume, as though this Sunday afternoon was simply where he was supposed to be, and there was no drama in that. Amelia opened the door. He looked at her face, and he looked at her eyes, and he said, "How are you doing?" Not "How is Olivia?" Not "How did it go?" "How are you doing?" "I'm okay," she said. And then, because it was Jordan, "I've been better." "I know." He stepped in. Zoe moved past him immediately toward the living room, already pulling her crayons from her coat pocket, already oriented toward Olivia the way a compass orients toward north. Amelia watched Zoe cross the room and settle beside Olivia on the couch, without announcement, without ceremony, just sitting down next to her, the way you sit down next to someone who you know is in a place that needs company more than it needs words. Olivia looked at her. Zoe held up a crayon, purple. "I brought the good ones," she said. Olivia looked down at the photograph still in her hands. Then she set it carefully on the cushion beside her and accepted the crayon. "Do you want to draw flying horses?" Zoe asked. "Not today," Olivia said. "Okay." Zoe opened her crayon box. "What do you want to draw?" Olivia thought about it. A woman with a big laugh. Zoe didn't ask why. She just handed Olivia the brightest yellow crayon in the box and said, "Start with the smile." Jordan had come to stand beside Amelia in the doorway. They both watched this for a moment without speaking. "She knew to just sit down," Amelia said quietly. "She practices it on me," Jordan said. "When I've had a hard day and I don't want to talk, she just comes and sits. Started doing it when she was 4. He paused. "I don't know where she got it. Not from her mother. Not really from me either, not in those early years." He was quiet for a second. "Maybe she just figured it out herself." "Some things can't be taught," Amelia said. "No," he agreed. "They can't." He went to the kitchen. He didn't ask where things were. He had been here enough times now to know where the pots were, where the cutting board lived, which burner ran hot. He started moving with the comfortable economy of a man who cooked not as a performance, but as a function, something he did because it needed doing and because he was good at it. Amelia sat at the kitchen island and watched him. "Marcus called again," she said. Jordan's hands didn't stop moving. He picked up an onion, set it on the board, reached for the knife. "Same thing, different packaging." He said he'd spoken to a family attorney, not his someone new. He said he wanted to revisit the question of Olivia's school. She paused. "The school she's been at for 2 years. The one she loves. The one where her teacher knows she needs extra time on reading comprehension, and knows that she gets anxious before fire drills, and knows to let her draw during rest period because it helps her regulate." "He wants to change her school," Jordan said flatly. "He doesn't have grounds, legally. She's mine, and I have sole custody, and he has no parental rights because he signed away whatever claim he might have argued when we divorced." She said it clinically, the way she talked about anything involving Marcus like a legal document she had memorized so thoroughly that the emotional content had been processed out of it. "But he knows that challenging it would cost me time and attention and legal fees that I don't want to spend." Jordan put the knife down, turned to look at her. "What does he actually want?" he said. She met his eyes. I don't think he fully knows. I think he's angry that I'm happy. The word happy surprised her slightly as she said it. Not because it was wrong, because it was accurate, and she hadn't intended to be that direct about it. Jordan looked at her for a moment without speaking. Are you, he said, happy? She looked at the kitchen. At the sound of the girls in the other room, Zoe explaining something in her methodical way, Olivia responding with the quickness that meant she was engaged. Really engaged, the fog of the morning lifting. At Jordan standing in her kitchen on a Sunday afternoon, like he'd been doing it for years. Yes, she said. That's what scares him. Why does it scare him? Because he spent 3 years telling me I was too difficult to love, she said. And if I'm happy if someone is choosing me specifically with full information, then he was wrong. A pause. Marcus is very bad at being wrong. Jordan picked up the knife again, turned back to the cutting board. What does your attorney say? He asked. That he has no case, that it's harassment technically, but not the kind that's easy to prosecute. That the best response is to document everything and wait for him to exhaust his own aggression. She looked at her hands on the counter. My attorney has been saying that for 3 years. It's accurate advice. It also means living inside someone else's bad behavior indefinitely and calling it strategy. How long has he been escalating? Jordan said. Since February. She paused. Since I stopped answering his texts within the same day. Jordan was quiet for a moment. He noticed you were less available, he said. Yes. Because of me. Because of a lot of things, she said. But yes, partly because of you. He didn't respond to that immediately. She watched him cook the focused efficiency of it, the way he moved without wasted motion, the same quality she had noticed in how he handled the girls when something went sideways. I need to ask you something, he said, and I need you to answer honestly. When have I not? He looked at her over his shoulder. Fair point. He turned back to the stove. Is this what's happening with Marcus? Is it making you want to pull back from me? She considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. No, she said. Honest. Honest, she said. If anything, it's making me... She stopped, looked for the word. Clearer. About what I want. About why I want it. She paused. Marcus is trying to remind me that my life is complicated, but he's actually reminding me why I need someone who isn't scared of complicated. Jordan was quiet. Is that what I am? He said. Someone who isn't scared of complicated? You're someone who walks toward it, she said. That's rarer. He finished what he was doing at the stove, turned the heat down, and turned around. He leaned back against the counter and crossed his arms and looked at her with the full attention that she had come to understand was his default mode, with her not intense in a pressuring way, just present in a complete way, the way of someone for whom you were worth the full allocation of their focus. Amelia, he said, I need to say something, and I want you to let me finish before you respond. She straightened slightly. Okay. I've been thinking about this for a while, he said. Not about Marcus. About us. About where this is going, and what I want it to become. He paused. I'm not in a hurry. I'm not going to put pressure on the timeline. But I want to be clear with you about something, because I think you deserve clarity more than you deserve comfort. She waited. I'm in this, he said. Not partly, not conditionally, not with an exit planned in case things get hard. He held her gaze. The Marcus situation is not a reason for me to reconsider. The journalist is not a reason for me to reconsider. Your career, your intensity, the fact that you will always work too hard and sleep too little, and sometimes disappear into your head for 3 days without fully explaining why none of that is a reason for me to reconsider. He paused. You need to know that because I think you've been waiting for me to find a reason. And I want to stop the waiting. Amelia looked at him. She wanted to say something deflecting, something measured, something that maintained the careful equilibrium she had built around herself over 3 years of being very smart about not needing anyone. Instead, she said, I'm terrified of what happens if this doesn't work. I know, he said. I'm not terrified the way I used to be. she continued. It's different now. Before I was afraid of the pain. Now I'm afraid of... She stopped. Of what you'd lose, he said. Of what Olivia would lose, she said. Of Zoe. Of this. She looked at the kitchen, at the doorway, at the sound of the girls. Of the version of my life that's become possible since that dinner at Hartley's. Jordan was quiet. Then protect it, he said. Not by holding it at arm's length, by choosing it. She looked at him for a long moment. I'm choosing it, she said. Good, he said, and turned back to the stove. And just like that, no ceremony, no elaborate declaration, no moment designed for the feeling. Something settled between them into a new and permanent shape. The journalist's piece ran on a Thursday 10 days after Patricia Morrow's call. Amelia's communications director had worked with her legal team to ensure that Vertex's official position was documented and prominent. They had prepared a statement about Olivia's adoption, warm, factual, unapologetic, that was provided to the publication and quoted extensively. The statement didn't explain or defend. It simply said that Amelia Carter had chosen to become the mother of her late sister's daughter, that this decision had been one of the most important of her life, and that she had nothing further to add on the subject, because her family's private life was not a matter of public record. The piece ran. It was not what Amelia had feared. Patricia Morrow was a competent journalist, and the story she had assembled was more complicated than a takedown, because the facts, when assembled, honestly told a story that was difficult to frame as scandal. A woman who had lost her sister. A woman who had taken in a baby. A woman who had made some imperfect business decisions in the months of sharpest grief, and then built her company into something that employed 400 people. The investors who were quoted as critical were, on rereading clearly, more interested in positioning themselves for a future negotiation than in genuine condemnation. The material from Marcus's attorney was vague and legalistic, and lacked the personal edge that would have given it power. The comment sections, which Amelia never read, and which Jordan read extensively and then summarized for her with careful editorial judgment, were, he reported, almost entirely sympathetic. "What are they saying?" she asked. "Most of them want to know if you're okay," he said. "I'm a CEO. I'm not supposed to have strangers worrying about whether I'm okay. People don't read about someone losing their sister and immediately taking in her baby and think, I hope her Q4 numbers are solid," Jordan said. "They think that must have been the hardest thing, because it was." She was quiet. "There's one comment I want to read you," he said. "Jordan, just one." She could hear him scrolling. "This one says, whatever you think about her company or her decisions, a woman who looked at a 3-day-old baby with no one in the world and said, 'She's mine,' is someone worth knowing." Amelia sat with that. "That's," she started. "That's Dana's legacy," he said. "And yours." She was at the office when he called to tell her this, standing at the window again, the way she had been standing 3 weeks earlier when the journalist had first called, and it struck her that the window had become the place she stood when things were happening. That mattered, as though proximity to the city and its enormity was a useful reminder that life was larger than whatever the current crisis was. "Jordan," she said. "Yeah." "Has Marcus seen it?" "Probably," Jordan said. But his attorney's material got about 3 sentences in the piece, and none of them did what he wanted them to do. A pause. "How are you feeling?" "Relieved," she said. "And angry that I feel relieved. Because the story was always what it was. I shouldn't have needed a journalist's framing to determine whether it was worth being ashamed of." "You were never ashamed of it," Jordan said. "No," she agreed. "But I was afraid of what it would become in someone else's hands." "That's reasonable," he said. "And it turned out to be less terrible than you feared." "Most things do," she said. "That doesn't make the fear feel any less real while it's happening." "No," he agreed. "It doesn't." She was quiet for a moment. "Olivia's teacher called me this morning," she said. "What happened?" "Nothing bad," She said Olivia came in on Monday and told the class that she had a first mommy named Dana who loved her very much and then gave her to her real mommy, which is me. Amelia paused. And then she said, quote, "My real mommy also has a Jordan and a Zoe, and Zoe researches things before she commits." Jordan made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but was in the same neighborhood. Her teacher wanted me to know, Amelia continued, because she said Olivia delivered it with. These are the teacher's words. The confidence of someone making a public address. That tracks, Jordan said. Mrs. Patterson said the other children were very interested in the concept of researching before committing and asked several follow-up questions. This time, Jordan actually laughed. The full version. Amelia stood at the window and listened to it. "She's going to be fine," he said when the laughter settled. "She's going to be more than fine," Amelia said. "She's going to be formidable." "She already is." "Yes," Amelia said. "She already is." Spring arrived the way it does in Chicago, not gradually but in sudden negotiated increments. Cold days still outnumbering warm ones, but the warm ones gaining ground with increasing confidence. The city seemed to exhale. People came outside. The parks filled. It had been 6 months since Hartley's. 6 months of Saturdays and phone calls, and the girls and the conversations that started about one thing and ended about something entirely different. 6 months of Amelia learning that being known by someone fully known, the way Jordan knew her with all the information, was not the loss of privacy she had feared, but a specific and irreplaceable relief. Like putting down something heavy you'd carried so long, you'd forgotten it had weight. 6 months of Jordan showing up. Every time. Without fail. It was on a Saturday in April that Marcus called and said something different. Amelia was in her home office. Olivia at a playdate with Zoe and Jordan when the phone rang. Marcus. She almost didn't answer. She had been managing his calls with increasing distance, since the journalist piece, since his legal maneuvering had produced nothing, since the sustained pressure he had applied had failed to achieve its intended effect, which was she now understood clearly to make her feel unstable enough to need him as a reference point. She answered. Marcus, I want to talk to you, he said. Not with the clipped authority he usually deployed. His voice was different, quieter. Without lawyers. Without, I just want to talk. She waited. I saw the piece, he said. The Standard piece. I'm sure you did. My attorney told me what he'd provided. I want you to know that I didn't authorize. It doesn't matter, she said, evenly. Amelia, Marcus, she kept her voice level. Whatever you authorized or didn't authorize, it happened. It's over. The piece is printed and it said what it said and I've moved on from it. She paused. What do you want? A silence. I want to ask you something, he said, and I want you to be honest with me. I'm always honest with you. That's been the consistent problem between us. He ignored that. This man you're seeing, Jordan. She felt herself still. What about him? She said. Is he? Marcus stopped. Tried again. Is he good to Olivia? Of everything Marcus had ever said to her across the entirety of their relationship and its ending and its difficult aftermath, this was the question she had not expected. She was quiet for a moment. Yes, she said. And to you? Marcus. I'm asking, he said. I'm asking seriously. I know I don't have the right to ask. I know that. But I'm asking. She looked out the window of her home office. The spring light was doing what spring light does, making ordinary things look slightly more significant than they are. Yes, she said. He is. A long silence. Then I'll stop, Marcus said. She waited. The school thing, the attorney, I'll stop. He paused. I'm not saying it to be noble. I'm saying it because... He stopped again. She could hear something move through his voice that was not easy to name. I told you once that no man would want to raise another man's child. I remember. I was wrong, he said. I was saying something about myself, and I dressed it up as a universal truth, and I was wrong. Amelia sat very still. That doesn't fix what I did, he said. I know that. I'm not asking it to. Another pause. I'm just saying it because you should know I was wrong. She didn't speak for a moment. Thank you, she said finally, because whatever else he was, he had said it. And it had cost him something, and she believed him. Take care of Olivia, he said. Always, she said. I always have. He hung up. She sat with the phone in her hand. Then she called Jordan. He picked up on the second ring. She could hear Zoe and Olivia in the background, something playful laughter that had Zoe's methodical quality and Olivia's uncontained quality all mixed together. Hey, he said. They're currently creating what Zoe has described as an outdoor research facility, which I think means they dug a hole in the backyard. That's your yard, she said. I'm aware. She heard a door. The girl noise faded slightly. What happened? She told him. All of it. Marcus's call. What he'd said. What he'd admitted. Jordan listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. How do you feel? He said. Strange, she said. Like something I'd been bracing against for so long stopped pushing, and I don't quite know what to do with my weight. That's what relief feels like sometimes, he said. When the thing you were fighting finally gives. I don't want to forgive him, she said. You don't have to forgive him, Jordan said. You can just let it be finished. She looked out the window again. The spring light was still doing what it had been doing, unstirred by the conversation she'd just had. He said you were good to Olivia, she said. He asked about me. He asked if you were good to Olivia and if you were good to me. What did you say? I said yes, she said. To both. A pause. Thank you, Jordan said quietly. It's the truth, she said. I know, he said. Thank you for saying it. In the background, she could hear Zoe's voice announcing something in the specific register that meant a research conclusion had been reached. Then Olivia's voice responding with immediate conviction. What are they saying? Amelia asked. Jordan was quiet, listening. Then, Zoe says worms live deeper than they thought, which means their research facility needs to be expanded. Olivia says they should name the worms before disturbing them further. Amelia pressed her hand flat against the desk. Of course she does, she said. Do you want to come over? Jordan said. We have worms that need naming. She laughed. The real one. The one without calculation. I'm on my way, she said. She thought about the conversation with Marcus for a long time after that day. Not obsessively. Not with the grinding retrospective quality that characterized the first year after the divorce, but in the way you think about a closed door. With the particular relief of finality. He had been wrong, and he had said so. It did not undo the years. It did not undo, no man wants to raise another man's child, spoken in a kitchen that was supposed to be hers, in a marriage that was supposed to be real. But it did something. It placed a period at the end of a sentence that had been running on and on since before Olivia could talk. She told her therapist about it. She had been seeing a therapist since the divorce quietly without publicizing it the way she did most things that mattered personally. And Dr. Reyes had walked with her through a significant amount of territory that Amelia had never intended to share with anyone. How did it feel? Dr. Reyes asked, to hear him say he was wrong. Like closing a tab, Amelia said. I'd had it open so long I'd forgotten it was still using memory. Dr. Reyes wrote something. And Jordan, how is that changing? It's not changing, Amelia said. It's deepening. She paused. There's a difference between something changing and something deepening. Changing means instability. Deepening means roots. Dr. Reyes offered. Yes, Amelia said. Roots. Are you scared of that? She thought about it honestly. I'm aware of how much I have to lose, she said. But I'm not making decisions out of that awareness anymore. I'm making them out of what I actually want." "And what do you actually want?" She thought about the kitchen on Sunday afternoons, the girls and their crayons, Jordan cooking without asking where anything was, Zoe sitting silently next to Olivia in the way she had learned from her father. Olivia drawing a woman with a big laugh. "This," she said. "I want this." Dr. Reyes nodded. Then she said the work now is trusting it. Amelia had thought that would be the hard part, that trusting it would require sustained effort, the way building Vertex had required sustained effort, the way getting through the first year after the divorce had required sustained effort. She discovered instead that trusting it was surprisingly easy when you were actually living inside it, when it wasn't theoretical, when the evidence was not a hope but a daily accumulation of fact. Jordan showed up. Every Saturday, most Thursdays. For every school thing and work crisis and ordinary Tuesday evening that became extraordinary only because he was in it. He showed up, and that as he had told her months ago on the phone, when she was afraid when the walls were still mostly intact, that was the whole case. He kept showing up. It was Zoe who noticed it first. They were all in the kitchen. Jordan's kitchen a Sunday in May, late enough in the afternoon that the food was already finished, and the girls were drawing at the table, and Jordan and Amelia were washing dishes in the particular companionable silence that domestic tasks produce when you've done them beside someone enough times, and Zoe looked up from her drawing and said to no one in particular, "You two look like a family." Jordan and Amelia both stopped. Zoe said it the way she said most things observationally, as though reporting a fact she had verified through adequate research and was now ready to publish. Olivia looked up from her own drawing, looked at Jordan, looked at Amelia, turned back to Zoe. "They do," Olivia agreed with the same matter-of-fact certainty. Then, both girls went back to drawing. Jordan looked at Amelia. Amelia looked at Jordan. She looked at the kitchen, at the girls, at the dishes between them and the afternoon light through the window, and all the small accumulated ordinary things that were somehow the architecture of something she hadn't allowed herself to name yet, because naming it made it real, and real things could be lost. "Yeah," Jordan said quietly. Not to the girls, to her. She looked at him. "Yeah," she said, and the word settled into the kitchen like something that had been on its way for a long time and had finally arrived exactly where it was supposed to be. Outside, a car passed. A dog barked somewhere down the block. Chicago continued its indifferent and magnificent existence around a kitchen where two people who had survived their separate disasters were standing at a sink with dish soap on their hands. And two little girls who had named every worm in a backyard research facility were drawing at the table, and all of them together were quietly without ceremony, without anyone having declared it official, a family. Zoe had said so, and Zoe researched things before she committed. So it must be true. Zoe put it in her calendar, not the question she had asked her father back in February, though that entry still lived in his phone untouched, counting down to the date she had assigned it with the precision of a 6-year-old who believed that important things deserved documentation. She put something else in the calendar. She put it in her own calendar, the one Jordan had set up for her on an old tablet he'd repurposed for schoolwork, the one she used to track what she called her research schedule. She put in, "Family confirmed." Date of observation, May kitchen dishes. Jordan found it 3 days later. He stood in the kitchen with the tablet in his hand and read it twice. Then he set it down on the counter and stood there for a long moment with the particular stillness of a man who has been moved by something and is deciding what to do with that. He called Amelia. "She documented it," he said. "Documented what?" "The kitchen. Sunday. What she said." He paused. "She put it in her calendar. Family confirmed. Date of observation." Amelia was quiet on the other end. "She treats us like a research subject," Amelia said finally. "She treats everything she loves like a research subject," Jordan said. "It's how she makes sure it's real." Another silence, longer. "Jordan," Amelia said. "Yeah. I want to ask you something and I need you to be honest." "Always," Are we moving too slowly? She said. For the girls. For what this actually is. She paused. Because I'm aware that I have a tendency to manage the pace of things in my life as a way of managing risk. And I'm asking whether that's what I'm doing here. Jordan was quiet for a moment. She had learned to read his silences. This one was the processing kind, the kind where he was actually thinking rather than gathering himself. No, he said. We're not moving too slowly. We're moving at the speed of people who are doing this right. He paused. But I think you're asking something else. What am I asking? You're asking whether I know what I want, he said. And whether I'm going to say it out loud, or keep letting it live in the space between us where it's safe because it hasn't been named yet. She didn't answer, because he was right. I know what I want, he said. I've known for a while. I've been waiting because I wanted to be sure you were ready to hear it. Not because you couldn't handle it, you can handle anything. Because I wanted to make sure that when I said it, it landed somewhere that was ready to receive it, rather than somewhere that was still deciding whether to run. I'm not running, she said. I know you're not, he said. That's why I'm going to say it. She was very still on her end of the phone. I want to marry you, he said, not as a proposal, not with the formal architecture of a question, just a statement of the truest thing he knew offered with the same directness he brought to everything. I want Zoe and Olivia to grow up in the same house. I want to wash dishes with you on Sunday afternoons for the rest of my life. I want to be the person you call when something goes wrong, and the person who's already there when something goes right. A pause. I'm not asking right now. I'm not putting a timeline on it. But I want you to know that's where I'm going, so that you can decide whether that's where you're going too. Amelia stood in her office, the city through the window, the afternoon light that had been doing its thing every time something important happened, as though it had decided to witness. That's where I'm going, she said. Yeah. Yes, she said. That's exactly where I'm going. She heard him exhale. Not with relief, with something more settled than relief. The sound of a man who had said the true thing and heard the true answer, and could now stand in the knowledge that both were real. Okay, he said. Okay, she said. I'll talk to Zoe, he said. I'll talk to Olivia, she said. A pause. Jordan, she said. Yeah. When you do ask, formally, don't do it without them. He was quiet for a second. Then quietly, I wasn't going to. He asked on an evening in September, not because September was a particularly significant month. It was significant only in the way that all months become significant in retrospect, once they contain something that matters. Jordan had not planned it for September the way some men plan proposals for anniversaries or holidays, or elaborate staged moments. He had planned it for when it felt right. And it felt right on a Thursday evening in September, when the weather had turned just enough to require jackets, and the city smelled like the beginning of something, and Jordan Mitchell looked at the life he was living and decided that the moment was now. He had told Zoe 3 weeks before. He had sat with her at the kitchen table on a Saturday morning, just the two of them, Amelia and Olivia, arriving later, and said, I want to talk to you about something important. Zoe had looked up from her cereal with the expression that meant she was allocating full processing capacity. I want to ask Amelia to marry me, he said, and I want to know what you think about that. Zoe put her spoon down. She looked at the table, then at her father, then at the table again. Is Olivia going to be my sister? She said. If Amelia says yes, Jordan said. And if you and Olivia decide that's what you are to each other. Zoe was quiet for what felt like a long time. I already decided, she said. When? February, she said. In the park, when she let me hold Mr. Bunny's. She looked at her father with the steady certainty that he had loved and been slightly unnerved by since she was 3 years old. I put it in my research notes. Jordan looked at his daughter. You're something else, you know that, he said. You say that a lot, Zoe said, picking up her spoon. I think it means yes. It means yes, he confirmed. Zoe nodded once. Then ask her, she said. I've been waiting. He told Amelia about this conversation later, and she laughed for a long time, the full, unguarded laugh that had started to happen more easily, the one that lived in her chest before the divorce and had been slowly coming back, the one that Jordan had been quietly coaxing back into existence for 9 months, without either of them formally acknowledging that that was what he was doing. She's been waiting, Amelia said. Since February, Jordan said. Apparently, the Mr. Bunny's moment was decisive. She told Olivia, Amelia said. Last week, they had what Olivia described as a private conference about it. She came and asked me if it was okay if Zoe was her sister. Jordan was quiet. What did you say? I said that was between her and Zoe, Amelia said. That sisters weren't something a mom decided. They were something you became. And Olivia said, then we already became it. She paused. Then she went back to drawing. Jordan closed his eyes for a second. These kids, he said. I know, she said. The proposal itself happened at Hartley's. Same restaurant, same table near the back with the amber light and the wooden chairs that had hosted enough dinners to have their own stories. The hostess who seated them was not the same one who had seated Amelia and Olivia 11 months earlier, but the room was the same. The smell was the same, the particular warmth of the place that made everything that happened inside it feel slightly more significant than it might have elsewhere. Jordan had booked the table for 4. Zoe sat beside him wearing the dress with the purple sash that she wore for things that required effort. Olivia sat beside Amelia wearing the green dress with the white collar that Amelia had negotiated her into on the first night, which had since been upgraded in Olivia's personal mythology from princess enough to the important dress. They had dinner. Real dinner. Not a staged prelude, but an actual meal with actual conversation. Zoe explaining to Olivia a research project she was conducting on the migratory patterns of monarch butterflies. Olivia commissioning an imaginary horse cavalry to assist the butterflies in their journey. Jordan and Amelia talking across the table with the ease of people who have had enough conversations to have developed a private shorthand. It was only when the plates were cleared and the girls were drawing. Olivia had her crayons. Zoe had her own crayons. As instructed, the table between them was already accumulating art that Jordan reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. He looked at Amelia. She looked at him. She knew. She had known since he suggested Hartley's had known, with the certainty that comes from paying close attention to a person for 11 months. But knowing and witnessing were different things, and what she felt when he took out the small box was not the confirmation of a prediction, but something that moved through her the way things move through you when they are finally actually undeniably real. Zoe looked up from her drawing. Olivia looked up from hers. Neither of them said anything. They watched with the collective focus of 2 children who had been briefed to varying degrees and were now witnessing the event in question with the attention it deserved. Jordan opened the box. He did not get down on one knee. He had thought about it and decided against the theater of it, not because he didn't want to honor the moment, but because Amelia was not a woman who needed theater, and because what he wanted to give her was not a performance, but a truth. He set the box on the table between them. Inside it was a ring simple, not ostentatious, a single stone set in a plain band, because he had looked at it and thought that's her. Not elaborate. Not trying to be something it wasn't, just exactly what it was, and beautiful because of it. He looked at her. I've been thinking about what to say, he said. I had a whole version of it planned. I've been revising it for 3 weeks. He paused. But I think what I actually want to say is simpler than any of it. Amelia waited. You walked in here 11 months ago holding Olivia's hand, he said. And you were ready for me to disappoint you. You had already pre-calculated the exit. You had already decided how you were going to absorb whatever damage the evening produced and get back in your car and be okay. She didn't say anything. "And I looked at you," he said, "and I looked at her, and I thought whoever told this woman that she was too much to love was the most wrong I have ever seen a person be." Amelia's eyes went bright. "I'm not asking you because you're the CEO," he said. "I'm not asking you because of what you've built, or what you've achieved, or how strong you've had to be for so long. I'm asking you because you are the person who sat on a bench in Lincoln Park and told me about Dana, like it was the first time you'd been trusted with the truth about your own grief. Because you called me the night the journalist called, and you said before you read it somewhere else, because you chose honesty over self-protection, even when self-protection would have been easier." He paused. "Because you are the person who sat in a kitchen on a Sunday morning and told a 5-year-old the most important story of her life, and you did it with so much love that Olivia's first response was to ask to see pictures." Olivia across the table was very still. Zoe had put down her crayon. "I'm asking you because of all of it," Jordan said. "The hard parts and the easy parts and every part in between. I want the whole thing. I want the messy mornings and the school meetings and the arguments about whose turn it is to call the plumber. I want to be the person who's already there when you get home. And I want to be the person you call when you're scared. And I want to watch Olivia and Zoe grow into whatever extraordinary things they're going to be." He looked at her steadily. "I love you. And I'm asking you, in front of the two most important people in our lives, to let me spend the rest of mine proving it." The restaurant had gone quiet around them, in the way that spaces sometimes go quiet when something real is happening in them. Not silent, but recalibrated the ambient noise, softening as though the room itself was paying attention. Amelia looked at Jordan. She looked at the ring. She looked at Zoe, who was sitting with her hands flat on the table, and her eyes very wide, and her research face fully deployed. She looked at Olivia. Olivia was watching her mother with the expression that Amelia knew better than any other expression in the world, the one that said, "I'm watching how you handle this. I'm learning from it. This is going in the archive." Amelia looked back at Jordan. "Yes," she said. The word came out without ceremony, and without the elaborate qualification that everything in her life usually required. Just the word clean and complete. "Yes," she said again, because it deserved to be said twice. Jordan picked up the ring and put it on her hand, and she let him, and his hands were steady, and so were hers. And it was not a movie. It was better than a movie, because it was true. Olivia put both arms around her mother's waist from the side, the way she had in the kitchen on the Sunday morning with the photographs. The thing she did when the emotion was too large for words. Zoe looked at Jordan. "Is it official?" she said. "It's official," he said. Zoe picked up her crayon, made a small, precise check mark on the corner of the paper in front of her. "I'm updating my calendar," she said. Jordan laughed. "The full version, the one from the chest." And Amelia laughed too, the unguarded one, the one that had been coming back incrementally since October and was now fully restored, fully hers, belonging to no version of the past and only to this moment and the ones ahead of it. Olivia watched both of them laughing and decided this was the correct response to the evening and added her own. And the four of them sat in Hartley's at the table near the back with the amber light and laughed together, and the restaurant went on around them, and the city went on outside, and none of it knew or cared about what was happening at that particular table, but they knew. All four of them knew. The wedding was in June the following year. Not large. Neither of them wanted large. Amelia had once thought in the abstract that she would be indifferent to weddings, that they were logistical events, organizational exercises that happened to have emotional content. She discovered she was wrong about this. She discovered that a wedding, when it was the right one, was not an event. It was a declaration made in front of the people who had witnessed you and were choosing to continue witnessing you. They chose a venue that was not a ballroom and not a country club and not any of the things that Amelia's position and wealth could have easily produced. They chose a restaurant, not Hartley's, though they considered it. A rooftop space on the north side, open to the Chicago summer sky, with Edison lights strung across the perimeter, and tables that had cloth napkins, but not the kind of formality that made children uncomfortable. Because there were children. Zoe walked down the aisle first. She had decided this herself with characteristic certainty, explaining to Jordan that since she was the one who had documented the confirmation of the family, it was appropriate that she lead the procession. Jordan had said she was not wrong. She wore the dress with the purple sash, and she walked with the measured precision of someone who has rehearsed and found the rehearsal adequate. Olivia walked beside Amelia. Not behind her, not ahead of her, beside her. This had been Olivia's decision too. When someone at the planning stage had suggested Olivia could be a flower girl and walk ahead, Olivia had looked at that person with the patience of someone explaining something for the third time and said, "I'm walking with my mom." And that was that. Amelia had worn white. Not the brilliant white of someone making a first statement, but a softer version, the white of someone who had earned what the color was supposed to mean and was wearing it without apology. She had done her hair different. Olivia had noticed immediately. "You did your hair different again," Olivia said that morning. "I know. Last time you did your hair different was the first time we saw Jordan." Amelia had looked at her daughter in the mirror. "That's right. And that turned out okay," Olivia said, with the considered understatement of someone for whom okay was doing significant work. "That turned out more than okay," Amelia said. Olivia looked at herself in the mirror too, her own dress, pale yellow, chosen by herself, because she said yellow was the color of the happiest things. She adjusted Mr. Bunny's, who was serving as a witness, from a chair near the window. "Mommy," she said. "Yeah, baby." "Do you think Dana knows?" Amelia's breath caught. She looked at Olivia's face in the mirror. The eyes that were Dana's eyes. The smile that was Dana's smile when something had delighted her beyond what she'd expected. "Yes," Amelia said. "I think she knows everything." Olivia nodded. "I think so too," she said. "I think she's the reason it happened." Amelia turned to look at her daughter directly, not through the mirror. "What do you mean?" Olivia picked up Mr. Bunny's and looked at him with the thoughtful expression of someone assembling a complex conclusion. "If Dana didn't leave you me, you wouldn't have had me. And if you didn't have me, Jordan wouldn't have seen me first at the restaurant and thought I was important. And if he didn't think I was important, you wouldn't have trusted him." She looked up. "So Dana started it." Amelia stared at her daughter. 6 years old. 6 years old, and she had assembled the entire architecture of it, the causal chain from loss to love, from a hospital room with a 3-day-old baby to a restaurant, and a man kneeling. "And I was hoping to meet the most important person in your mom's life first." And she had placed Dana at the origin of all of it, which was. Amelia understood with the force of complete recognition exactly right. "Yes," Amelia said, her voice not entirely her own. "She started it." Olivia put Mr. Bunny's back in the chair. "Then I think it's going to be a good day," she said, and walked toward the door with the particular stride that was Dana's stride, the one that said the room was already hers, before she entered it. Amelia stood alone for a moment. She looked at the chair where Mr. Bunny's was sitting, serving as witness. "Thank you," she said, quietly, to the room, to the air, to whatever of Dana lived in the eyes of a 6-year-old who walked like she owned every room. Then she followed her daughter out. Jordan cried at the ceremony. He didn't plan to. He had considered himself adequately prepared. He was a man who had processed this decision over months, who had arrived at certainty through evidence rather than impulse, who did not generally cry in public, and had not done so in recent memory. But then Amelia appeared at the end of the aisle with Olivia beside her, and the yellow dress and the white dress, and the way Amelia looked at him from that distance, with the same expression he had learned to read over 14 months, the one that said, "I see you, and I am choosing what I see," and Jordan Mitchell, aircraft mechanic, single father man who showed up, felt his eyes do something he was not in a position to stop. Zoe, standing beside him, looked up and saw. She took his hand. She didn't say anything. She just held it the way she had learned from somewhere from herself, from the particular wisdom of children who love their parents precisely enough to hold space without filling it. He held her hand back. And they stood there together, father and daughter, and watched the two people who had turned the rest of their lives into something unrecognizable from the outside and exact from the inside walk toward them down the aisle of a rooftop in June. The vows were not borrowed. They had each written their own separately, without coordinating, and they had not shared them in advance. This had been Amelia's insistence. She wanted to hear what he said without having prepared a response, wanted the moment to be real rather than rehearsed. Jordan had agreed with the same readiness with which he agreed to everything that made sense to him, which was his version of enthusiasm. Jordan went first. "I've spent most of my adult life learning that love is not a feeling," he said. "It's a practice. It's something you do not, something that happens to you. It's choosing every day to show up for someone, not when it's easy, not when it's convenient, but especially when it isn't." He looked at Amelia. "You taught me that a person can be extraordinary and still need to be seen. You taught me that strength and vulnerability are not opposites. They're the same thing depending on who's in the room with you." He paused. "You and Olivia gave me back something I hadn't realized I'd stopped believing in. The possibility of a family made not by circumstance, but by pure, deliberate choice." He reached for her hand. "I choose you. I choose Olivia. I choose this. Every morning. For all the mornings." He stopped. Zoe squeezed his hand. Amelia looked at him for a moment before she spoke. She had the expression of someone who has arrived somewhere and is allowing themselves to fully register that they are there. "I almost canceled," she said. "The dinner. 11 months ago. I almost called Diane and said I had too much work and Olivia had an early bedtime and I just couldn't." She paused. "I had a plan for that evening. I knew how it would go. I knew what you would see when I walked in: a CEO, a divorced woman, a child. And I knew what you would do with that information, because I had watched men do it before." Her voice stayed steady. "And then you didn't. And then you walked past me, and you crouched down, and you said you wanted to meet the most important person in my life first." She paused. "I want you to know that I knew in that moment, not what would happen, but that something was possible that I had stopped believing was possible." Another pause. "You didn't rescue me. I want to be clear about that. I didn't need rescuing, and you knew better than to try. What you did was—" She stopped, found it. "You made a place, in the middle of this life, that had already happened, that was already formed, that already had its shape. You made a place that was exactly the size and shape of you. And then you stayed in it." She looked at him. "I love you for all the things you are, but I love you most for staying." The rooftop was quiet in the particular way of a space where something true has just been spoken, and the air needs a moment to hold it. Then Olivia beside Amelia said in a voice that was intended to be a whisper, but was not quite, "Mr. Bunnies is crying." Zoe on the other side looked across at her. "Mr. Bunnies can't cry," she said. "He's a stuffed animal." "He's very emotional," Olivia said firmly. A ripple of laughter moved through the assembled guests, and the moment shifted, not away from what it had been, but into something wider, something that could hold the laughter and the tears, and the two little girls standing like small definitive bookends on either side of a marriage that had begun with one of them and would continue through both of them. The officiant, who had performed approximately 200 weddings and claimed to have seen everything later, said to someone at the reception that she had not seen a ceremony quite like that one. When asked to elaborate, she said, "Most ceremonies are about 2 people. That one was about 4, and I don't mean that as a metaphor." Yeah, at the reception after the dinner and the dancing, and the moment when Zoe and Olivia commandeered the dance floor for a sustained performance that no adult attempted to interrupt, Jordan found Amelia standing near the edge of the rooftop railing looking out at the city. He came and stood beside her. "You okay?" he said. "Better than okay," she said. He looked out at the city with her. Chicago at night from a rooftop in June. The particular light of it, the enormity of it, the way it went in every direction to its horizon and beyond. "I've been thinking about something," Amelia said. "What?" Olivia said this morning that Dana started it. She said. The whole thing. The chain of it. Jordan was quiet. She's right, he said. I know. She paused. I've been thinking about what that means. That the hardest loss of my life was also the beginning, he said. The beginning, she confirmed. She turned to look at him. I don't know if I believe in things happening for a reason. I never have. I think it's too easy. I think it lets people off the hook for the randomness of loss. But, he said, but I believe in what you do with what you're given, she said. I believe in the choice to stay. I believe that you can take something that happened to you, something devastating, something that had nothing to do with what you deserved, and you can decide that it is not the last word. She looked at him. Dana dying was not the last word. My marriage failing was not the last word. 3 years of believing I was too much was not the last word. Jordan looked at her. No, he said, it wasn't. You are, she said. You and Zoe and Olivia and this. She gestured, not at the city, but at something behind them, the tables and the lights, and the sound of their daughters now apparently explaining something to a confused wedding guest about horse cavalry and butterfly migration. This is the last word. Jordan took her hand. He held it the way he held most things that mattered to him, not tightly, not with the grip of possession, but with the steady presence of someone who intends to remain. For now, he said. And then there'll be a next word, and one after that. She looked at him. You know what I mean. I do, he said. And you're right. He looked out at the city. This is the last word on who we were before this. Everything from here is something else. She leaned against him. He put his arm around her. Behind them, Zoe's voice, methodical, certain, was explaining something. Olivia's voice, immediate, large, was responding with complete conviction. The other guests around them were doing what guests at good receptions do, which is everything and nothing in particular, just being alive in a room where something worth celebrating has happened. Jordan looked at Amelia. Amelia looked at Jordan. Hey, he said. Hey, she said. We did it, he said. She almost smiled. Then she did. The full version, the one that had been coming back since October and was now completely permanently home. We did, she said. Below them, the city continued. Above them, the June sky continued. And on a rooftop in Chicago, 2 people who had survived everything that had been asked of them separately alone, in the years before they found each other, stood in the life they had chosen inside the family they had built with the 2 children who had decided everything long before any adult caught up. Some families are born. Some families are made from loss and patience, and a man who crouches down to be level with a 5-year-old, and a woman who tells the truth before the article runs, and a little girl who documents confirmations with the rigor of a researcher, and another little girl who names everything she loves, so it knows it belongs somewhere. Some families are proof that the hardest ending is sometimes, if you are willing to stay open to it, the most necessary beginning. Jordan stayed. Amelia chose. The girls had already known. And that all of it, every ordinary and extraordinary piece of it, was enough. That was everything.